Hey, what's up everybody? It's Lids, and we're back for some more Gwent, and today we're going to be playing more of the +1 seasonal event, which is an alternate game mode in which whenever we play a unit, we will also spawn a 1-power copy of that unit in the same row. Now, last time we looked at a meta counter deck to shut down the Snowdrop plus Idarran craziness, but some people were asking me, Lids, what about people who can play Snowdrop plus Idarran twice? Well, ladies and gentle witchers, today we have a deck that is designed to stop just that, so let's give it a look. So today's deck is specifically designed to shut down Idarran of Olivo, which is extremely strong in this seasonal event, because he can fill an entire row with copies of himself, and then use that to create a bunch of copies of other powerful units. Most often Snowdrop, because she can boost all the copies of Snowdrop extremely quickly. So previously we used a high damage Skellige deck to destroy all those Idarrans before they could create those copies. However, it only had enough damage to destroy one round of Idarrans, and if our opponent was, say, using Renew and Decoy to play Idarran and or Snowdrop multiple times, then that meant that we weren't able to stop them from doing that. So for that reason, this deck is designed with multiple ways to counter Idarran, and therefore, even if our opponent plays him multiple times, or plans to play him multiple times, we can stop them from doing that. So today we'll be playing a Nilfgaard deck that uses boosting, row flooding, movement, and locking to shut down those Idarran combos. First and most simply, we have the boosting counter, which just involves us playing Cahir in the melee row. That way, once they play all the Snowdrops, they can boost themselves, but if they do that, then we're going to get just as many boosts, if not more. The next way to shut down the Idarrans is by locking, and we do that by having Serrit in our hand, and then playing Auckes, either also from our hand or using a tutor card to play him from our deck. If we have Serrit in our hand, then that means that Auckes can lock every copy of the card that we're locking. That means we can lock every single copy of Idarran that our opponent creates. Next, we have some movement, because if Idarran takes up every possible spot in a row, then there's no room for them to spawn additional copies of other cards in that row. So we use cards like Nivellen and Samum to move those Idarrans into the same row, minimizing or outright negating the effectiveness of spawning in those additional copies of units with Idarran. Lastly, we have several rounds of disloyal units that we play on our opponent's side, and because they will still create copies of themselves in the +1 seasonal event, that means we can make things very crowded and flood our opponent's rows with units that they don't want to have. This doesn't completely remove Idarran, but it means that they won't have as much space to spawn in the units that they want. So this row flooding methodology for countering our opponent is okay, but probably not our preferred strategy. Lastly, we have a Stammelford's Tremors. It's not enough damage by itself to destroy every Idarran, but it can destroy all of the 1-power copies that they create, so worst comes to worst, we play this and at least minimize the amount of Idarrans on the playing field. So there's a look at all the ways we were planning to counter our opponent's Idarrans plus Snowdrop setups. Now I'll flip through the deck to show you what other cards we have. And Letho is a card that we can use to transform into, in some cases, even Idarran ourselves if we want to stoop to their level, or oftentimes to create another round of Cahir. That way we can boost more than they're boosting whenever they use their Snowdrop combos. Joachim is also an option for flooding their rows. Braathens to create more disloyal units to, again, flood their rows. Cahir for the boosting. Defender, most often going to be to defend Cahir in the melee row because he can be locked, he can be moved, in which case that will shut him down. Doadrick is one of the few cards in this deck that's not here to counter our opponent, it's just to put up more points for us. Artorius Vigo, creating that 1-power copy of a bronze unit, has a 95% chance of being a disloyal unit, so this is again for row flooding. Snowdrop is the card that goes with Doadrick, because if we combine Doadrick plus Snowdrop, Doadrick will give us card draw every turn, meaning that we can continue to boost Snowdrop. Serrit goes with Auckes for the lock. Nivellen's for the movement. Stammelford's Tremors for the damage. Imperial Diviner mostly here to purify any defenders our opponent has to try to block things we need to get rid of, or lock. Our Cahirs, flooding with all the spies. Samum for movement. Alchemist is here to move some of the power from those Cahirs in the melee row into a unit in the range row. That way we don't have all of our power in the melee row, and we aren't as susceptible to something like Idarran. Then Moorlehem Hunter, mostly just for a little bit more lock, although unlikely this is going to be necessary if we do have the Auckes plus Serrit combo. Emissary, another disloyal unit, and same with Mage Infiltrator, so both of them for the row flooding. So there's look at the deck, and like I was saying, tons and tons of ways to counter Idarran. Some of them more reliable than others, so we're going to have to pick and choose which approach seems most effective for the situation and based on which cards we have in our hand. For that reason, this deck is definitely more difficult to play than the one that we used last time, and may not necessarily be as effective against opponents that are not using the Idarran decks. But then again, he's so common in this seasonal event that having a deck that is specifically designed to counter him, I think is still a good bet to make. So now let's see it in action. Okay, so going against Movement Scoia'tael here. I think we know what that means. Very strong Idarran potential. In which case we have one counter. We can get Auckes, we can have a second. We have some flooding, but not a ton. And then we do not currently have Cahir. So that means Alchemist is definitely not all that helpful right now. More flooding. I think we might dump Imperial Diviner as well. Okay, Vigo. Potential to spawn in some flooding units. Here is Idarran. They probably should have played it in the range row where they did not have their tactic. It's one fewer Idarran. Although, actually, that Veil can complicate matters a bit. They also did not opt to move anything. So the best possible option here would have been if we had a tutor to make sure that we could get Auckes. That way, with Serrit in our hand, that would mean that he would lock all of these Idarrans, except for you. And there isn't really anything to flood at the moment because they didn't do any movement, and so there's no room for us to flood, at least in this row. So for that reason, I think we settle for Stammelford's Tremors. That will leave them with 2 Idarrans. They'll use Renew to get him back. Okay, well, that is very aggressive, because normally you'd be saving that Renew so that you could double up and go Idarran in round 1 and round 2 as well. But that means we've likely taken away that option from them. And I think in this case, what we do is now that we've used our primary source of damage, we instead flood this range row and just make it really hard for them to play anything. So let's go Joachim. And we get Doadrick. Ooh, I don't love this, because this is one of our point engines, and one that I would have preferred to have saved here, I think. We do have Doadrick to go with him, yes. But I mean, I was kind of just hoping we would end up getting Auckes, and then we get the amazing locking combo. Samum. Okay. On themselves. Interesting. But it's a slow play. So they don't have any additional units out there that they've spawned in yet. And that means we have time to put some of those Idarrans back in that same row with, say, something like Nivellen. So I think that's now what we go for here. Like so. And I guess while we're at it, we can go here and suppose we can see if we happen to get an Auckes. That would be great if we did, but none at the moment. That still could be very helpful, because if they have more movement, which of course we know they have at least some, like so, then we could use something like an Auckes. But here comes Snowdrop. So this is going to be their big boosting round in that case. But like I said, by forcing them to play Renew in round 1, means they can no longer play Idarran plus Snowdrop in 2 separate rounds. And so the best counter to this would have been if we had Cahir down there already, then we would be absorbing all these boosts. But we didn't have Cahir either, unfortunately. So that means that we don't have many options here other than to pass, because unfortunately our starting hand was just not quite what we were looking for here. And of course, the first card that we draw into is exactly the one that we would have liked. It's Auckes. We do still have Serrit, so we'll keep you around in case they have any other crazy combos they're looking to do. That means that the Moorlehem Hunter, probably not so necessary now that we have an amazing source of lock. And now with 3 spies, and potentially a 4th coming through Vigo, we have a lot of sources of flooding their rows, so I think this is decent. And yeah, I think they're going to go full movement now, because they more or less have to. They would have liked to have gone double Idarran plus Snowdrop, but we denied them that opportunity by forcing them into playing Renew in round 1. So I think the first thing we do here is let's go Mage Infiltrator to get rid of one of those Doblethanus entries. and make things a little more crowded in that range row where they're going to want to be doing the majority of their movement. But if we can make it so they run out of space, then that's going to become a lot more difficult. Yeah, there'll come more double thunder sentries here. So now let's go Vigo. And then Mage Infiltrator. Do something similar again here. Now Cat Witcher. Which is not enough to get rid of Vigo. So now we go Duchesses Informant, which will fill this row. And we can either take Double Thunder Sentries or Cat Witchers. We have another Duchesses Informant in our hand. So I think what we do is we start off with the Sentries. Put them down here. And we actually arguably don't want to be playing Cat Witchers of our own because we want to keep this row as full as possible. Now, Lena is tough because that can unjam them to a certain extent. But actually, what I think we should do here is let's go Auckes to lock both Cat Witchers. Oh, they do have Purification, really? Okay. In that case, let's make things more crowded still. And I think I would like to go with the Double Thunder Sentry, but actually in the melee row here. That way, whenever they're trying to move, they'll take damage. Which, granted, is hopefully not going to be for too much longer here, because we're going to continue to flood their rows. We'll actually get boosted as they move ours. Okay, Oneiromancy. My guess is going to be Gesras, yeah. So now what we do is we go Defender. And given how they only have 3 cards in their hand, and we very much need to win this round, let's go double cross here. And, oh, we have some very interesting options here, don't we? What if we steal some Gesrasses with Dudu? Why not? They do actually have a Double Thunder Sentry remaining in that melee row. That means we will take some damage when we do that movement, and this Gesras will come down in the melee row to destroy one of ours. But it's okay that they're going all out on the Gesrasses, because our next play here is to go Royal Decree into Cahir, who will absorb the boost from those Gesrasses. And they do have the Melenas, which can do some movement, but now our range row is full, so they can't move this Defender out of the way. They have Dryad Matron, although do they have any room for movement? None at all. And so, those boosts seem quite fine to me. And what we really want to do here is we want to make sure that we clog our range row so that way they can't move this Defender and make these Cahirs vulnerable. So let's go Serrit here, and I also don't particularly want to actually destroy one of their cards. So let's just make sure we hit a Melena and don't destroy it, maybe? They pass, and in doing so, they deal a little bit of damage, but we get a lot of boosts. And that means we can pass here and win round 2 with 1 card advantage as well. And they have disconnected, and I have a feeling this is a rage quit. Yeah, they disconnected, but I think we all know that that was actually a forfeit. So there's a look at a Nilfgaard deck designed to stop the +1 event Idarran plus Snowdrop combos. If you like the deck, then make sure to hit the like and subscribe button, and leave a comment down below to let me know which other cards, archetypes, and factions you'd like us to experiment with next. Thank you all for watching, and I'll catch you next time.